Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Do You Ever Wonder? My name is Mike Haltman. I am your host. I'm also the CEO of Hallmark Abstract Service, which puts these presentations on. And tonight, we are very excited to have as our guest Todd Vernon. He is he'll tell me if I'm speaking out of school here, but he's a software engineer turned a very successful entrepreneur. And is that correct, Todd?
Yes, that's pretty correct.
All right.
Pretty much a 20-year career of startups.
Nice. And I'll also tell you that one of the happiest viewers of tonight's episode, other than your daughter, would probably be my daughter, Samantha, who worked with Todd at a company by the name of Lijit, and who worked with Todd at a company by the name of VictorOps, introduced me to Todd. And, it's my pleasure, as most people know, one of the goals of this program is to bring information that's useful, actionable, and something that you can really utilize in your career. So as a software engineer turned entrepreneur, so I look at technology, at startups, at entrepreneurship in one of three ways. I view it as a disruptor, someone who comes in to change an industry, an innovator, someone who comes in to bring something that is needed and that didn't exist before, or maybe somebody who looks to build a better mousetrap. And I know that in your past businesses, I know Lijit, you were competing with Google, correct?
Yeah, in the ad space. Yeah.
Right. And that's I guess that would be considered trying to build a better mousetrap.
Yeah, it's a big ecosystem, and Google is the, million-pound gorilla for sure. But, it's a good example of a business where there was enough market share.
Right.
That there's plenty of room for 3 or 4, big companies in that space.
Well, at the time, and that was back in the, what was that, in the early 2000s, I think?
Yeah, 2007 to 2012, I think.
Right. Well, I was actually a customer of Lijit. I was a blog writer, and I actually used Lijit as a conduit to try and drive more income from my blog. So I thank you very much.
Fantastic. Yeah,
that was great. That was great. And then you moved to VictorOps. That's more of an innovation.
Yeah, that's a company that was in the IT space. When you have a bunch of engineers, and when something breaks, like some part of your computer infrastructure breaks, websites are 24/7 now. You don't go to a website anymore and find a thing that says, oh, sorry, we're down for a while, we'll be back. That doesn't exist anymore. Right. So what we would do is alert IT people to a problem with their infrastructure, which was, it's not a lot different than CarePenguin, because now we alert people to the health and well-being of their elderly family members.
So if I remember, you guys had a fairly catchy tagline, something about doesn't suck, makes it suck less.
Yeah, we make being on call, like carrying a pager, suck less.
Right, which is, what? That's a good tag. The key to a tagline is people remembering. And
it's a good brand promise, because like our software was great, but it's not going to make that job any better. I mean, it's just,
right.
It's going to make it a little better. It's not going to make it perfect. And people appreciate it when you don't, overblow what you do. So,
right. Well, I mean, in typically in business, they say under promise and over deliver.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So you're still going to be on call, but maybe you can go to someplace else and be on call there.
Exactly. You don't have to drive to the office. In some of my companies, we would have to drive to the office at 2 a.m. to fix something, because of course, it was an early stage company and something was broken all the time. So,
right.
It was definitely a pain. That's the thing that's important about any startup, is you're addressing a pain.
Right.
If you're not, it's just a nice to have, and then your chance of success is a lot less.
No, that's 100% right. And you want to solve a problem or ease a pain for the largest constituency possible.
Exactly.
I guess that's what makes it valuable.
Yep. Have a big market, and you don't have to own the whole thing. You just have to own enough that that you make a big company out of it.
Exactly. So now you went from software engineer, and when people think of a software engineer, they think of one type of person, and you went from there to creating an environment, a business, a family of employees, and how did that develop? How did you do that?
I actually started my career at NASA as a contractor to NASA, and I was actually in hardware. I was in the hardware space. I went to school for hardware. When I got out, I realized that I'm not very good at hardware, but I was pretty good at software, as it turns out. So, I did my time like everybody does. And then in like 97, we moved to Colorado, where we live now. And I started a company with two other founders called Raindance Communications. And we actually, I was a CTO, and we raised a lot of money and took the company public. And it was a successful exit, and it was good. But I was really a supporting character as a CTO. I was, my career was software, hardware engineer, software engineer, CTO. There's like no management steps in between the two.
Right.
So it was a bit unusual, but I got to sit in board meetings and help raise a lot of money over the course of eight to 9 years. And so kind of learned the ropes, sort of the honest way of sitting in the room the whole time. So then my second two companies, I was CEO, and the primary guy there. And then with CarePenguin, it's my daughter's company, and I'm back to just being a nerd.
Well, I'm sure you provide a little more to the process than just being a nerd. But what's the for an entrepreneur? I mean, you did go from the back to the front. What's the mindset that took you there? What is somebody who wants to do that, create, become a business owner? What's the mindset that worked for you that might work for them?
Well, first of all, the name of your podcast is perfect. I'm like, do you ever wonder about? I constantly wonder about everything. I've got like 12 projects going at any one time. I'm a classic maker. I like to make things, and I'm a habitual finisher. And that and ultimately my superpower is I'm a worrier. So
a warrior.
Yeah, when you put all those things together, it actually makes a pretty effective personality for starting a business. As far as, back of the house to front of the house, I just realized to attain what I wanted to attain in my career, you had to be on the front line. You had to be talking to people. It's all about communication and people and communicating a vision for a product. And if you're doing all that stuff, turns out you're kind of the CEO. So that's really the only way to really take something you think is a really great idea and make it something that the world will adopt and see your same vision.
Well, you said something a few seconds ago, to attain what it is that you want to attain. What is it that you wanted to attain that pushed you to take the step of becoming an entrepreneur?
You just get kind of wrapped up. For me, you get wrapped up in an idea and a product that isn't out there. And you do your diligence, and you check your market, and you talk to people, and you do all the things you should do. And then you realize, there's really nothing in this segment that's exactly like this. And it becomes kind of a game, right? I'm a personality that I never play video games. I don't like to play card games. I don't like to play any games. But this is a game to me. Like building companies is kind of a game to me. And I really enjoy the product aspect. I enjoy, I've enjoyed my whole career hiring young people right out of college, like your daughter. And, there's still, like, for my first company that started in 97, there'll still be a happy hour for that company because they were all young people. Like last year, the year before, there was a happy hour before the pandemic, and like 120 people showed up. Wow. Spontaneously.
Wow.
So, you really affect a lot of people's lives, not only your customers, but also the people, that ultimately work for you. And there's something really rewarding about that.
Well, I remember when we came out to, I forget why we were in Boulder. I guess it was to visit Sam, but we came into Lijit, and I don't know if I guess that's typical of a lot of technology companies, but the environment, the culture, it was inviting. It was everyone seemed to like everyone, and I'm sure that's not the case. But it seemed like a very good environment to work in.
Startups, especially if you attract venture financing, it's a velocity game, right? The only reason you venture fund a startup is because you believe if you don't, somebody else will beat you, to the market share for the idea. Because if you're thinking of an idea, somebody else is thinking of it too. It's like, I tell people all the time, don't hide your idea. It's pointless. It's out there. You just haven't found it yet. So with a velocity business, you're expecting people to work hard all the time. And so you got to treat them really well and have a good time. And it's not for everyone, but for the people that it's for, they really bond to it and really enjoy it. And that was kind of always, the way I felt too.
So that's the culture thing. That's, I know that, I don't know if Boulder was always a technology hub like San Francisco or, now Boston.
Okay, lost you.
Can you hear me? Todd? I'm going to assume you can probably still hear me, but the key is creating the right culture. Although I may have lost you, but hopefully you're going to come back. Let's see. But for everyone out there, so, it's always fascinating to talk to people who've achieved a high level of success at what it is they do. And, I know from my experience of watching Todd through the eyes of my daughter that, it's really an amazing thing to watch somebody execute in such a way that they ultimately achieve what it is that they want. And earlier in my career, I was a proprietary trader for a firm, and I'll get Todd back in a second. And I watched the firm, it was in the mid 80s or the mid to late 80s. And I watched the firm because technology back then was somewhat, it wasn't as good as it is today, certainly. And I saw a firm that drove technology, that innovated, that really created an environment to the point where they became one of the largest firms in the country. So, I mean, it's really a fascinating thing. But as Todd was saying, you really do need the focus and the ability to finish, because if you don't finish, then how many great ideas out there are just hanging on a vine because whoever it is that thought of it stopped halfway through. So, I mean, it's a fascinating world that I don't necessarily understand, but I'm filling a little bit of time with my background until Todd comes back, unless he doesn't come back, and then I'll fill a lot more time. But entrepreneurship, people become entrepreneurs for a lot of different reasons. So, my company in 2008, when the financial crisis hit, and many companies were forced out of business. I had a commercial mortgage lending company, and when Lehman failed, the way that the business operated was no longer viable. My partner and my wife was in a hard money residential construction business, and when 2008 hit, that was no longer viable. And basically, in that case, entrepreneurship came out of needing to create a new company. We had 2 kids in college, and for us, entrepreneurship was what we needed to do at the time. And thankfully, we created a business where we were able to do that. But again, it's a process fraught with angst and with a lot of anxiety, because you don't know if you're doing the right thing. You don't know if what you're creating is ultimately going to be a success. So, I give somebody like Todd a huge amount of credit. Oh, I think he might be back. Hold on one second. Yes, he is. Hi, Todd.
I'm sorry, I lost my internet connection at my house.
You know what? You need to get a better technology CTO in your house.
I couldn't ping Google. I actually connected through my phone.
And believe it or not, because you were gone, I had to improvise for I don't know how many minutes it was. So I can't wait to see what that sounds like.
Yeah, sorry about that. Left you hanging.
That's fine. That's fine. But I know we were talking about, culture and, what it takes to become an entrepreneur. What does it take? So in my business, just like I guess in your business as well, scale becomes an issue. How do you know when it's time to go from startup and incremental gains to scaling? And how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely with startups, my experience is you look for signs. They're all gates. First of all, you want to make sure that the idea is good before you do anything, right? So you talk to 100 people, whoever you can. That's what I mean. I tell people, don't keep your idea a secret. You're just keeping information from you. So you go and test your idea first with people. And you're not looking for them to say it's awesome, because a lot of times they can't really imagine the idea. You're just looking for them to say it's really bad, and it's hard with friends because they'll never tell you it's bad. So,
right.
So you got to, cross that hurdle, and then you sort of, put some money into it and build enough of a product that people can experience. And that helps you ask the next group of people, because now they're experiencing some part of a product. And people are much more reliable in giving you feedback on that. And then you kind of put more money in at that stage. And then sooner or later, you just got to jump,
So take me through Lijit. So
yeah.
Here you put a little bit of money in, and how small was it in the beginning? Who were your users? Who did you approach to be users? How did you find those users?
Lijit was a tough one because it was a completely new idea. So we really used the blogger space, so we hired people that would reach out, to bloggers to say, hey, you should try this on, because it was a plug into your blog and it would help you monetize your blog, but it would also perform other things too for you. And please try it and please talk about it. So it was really a word of digital mouth kind of company. So it was, it was a complicated company too, because it was a marketplace company. So with a marketplace company, you sort of have, people that want something on one side and people that want something on the other side, and you're the market maker. And that's how that company was. You had bloggers that wanted to monetize their blog, and you had advertisers who wanted to reach, unusual audiences.
Right.
The problem is with those companies, you got to build one side before the other. They don't scale gracefully. So, we literally spent 2 years recruiting bloggers that resulted in, millions and millions of page views a day that then we could help them monetize, because we could bundle that inventory and then sell it in a real-time auction to advertisers. Right. So it's a real leap of faith, and it was a heavily financed company from the beginning before we ever had $1 of revenue.
That's interesting. And the money was venture capital, or was it more of your own friends and family kind of thing?
So my first two companies, Raindance and Lijit, were both started off with seed money of like $1 million to $1.5 million. And in both of those cases, it was professional investors, because they're investors that I had worked with before. So they had a certain trust level. So there was some angel money, just individual money in there too alongside it. But the bulk of it was professional money. With CarePenguin, it's sort of the opposite. We went to pure bootstrap, went to friends and family and raised $100,000 to essentially build the product and test the market. So it's a completely different element. We will raise venture capital because it is a space that, it's a very large market. It's an ends and a B. So, it's a big market.
No question. And I think so let's go into CarePenguin. So CarePenguin, is a company or a concept that was envisioned by your daughter Marlo?
It was envisioned by it was certainly adopted by Marlo. So as I said, I'm kind of this maker, right? So I make stuff all the time, and I was playing around with IoT or Internet of Things devices, like your Nest is an IoT device, and things in like Nest cams or Echoes, in your house are sort of IoT devices. So I was playing around with the foundation of those kind of devices and how to build stuff with them, because I was sort of interested in the space. With VictorOps, I was interested in mobile. That was sort of the impetus from a technological point of view. But I was playing around with this stuff, and I was kind of measuring things around the house, and I was looking for some signal that would change, right? So I strapped it onto the pipe coming out of our water heater and started taking data and graphing it. And about this time, Marlo was in an entrepreneurial class at Colorado University, and she said, "Man, we should do something with this." And I, because I'm looking at the graphs of the data and going, this is an incredible proxy for human behavior in the house, right? If we're not home, nothing's happening. If we're home, we're feeding the dog and putting water in the dog bowl. We're making tea. We're doing all of these actions. And you can see it in the graph, like 7 times a day, we're doing things. And, so she came up with the idea, like, this would be a great way to monitor elderly people. And, I'm 57, so I have, parents of a certain age. So I'm already starting to think about these things. So, so she used it as her thing in her entrepreneurial class, went through pitch contests and ended up winning several of them. And when she got out of school, she says, I think I want to do this. And I said, yeah, this is actually a pretty good idea. It's got a great market. You can totally undercut everybody in the space on price. And there's more old people every year.
Now, why can you undercut everyone? When you say in the space, you're talking about the wrist device where you call 911.
Yeah.
Whatever the conventional. This is unconventional.
Yeah, anything that kind of you would put into the wellness of somebody living alone category. So that's anything from Life Alert to Nest cameras to there's other devices like this. But the thing that's consistent among all those devices is they're very expensive, and they don't generally cover the whole house unless you buy a lot of them. Right. So it takes an expensive device and makes it even more expensive because you got to buy a lot of it. And then you got to put an expensive subscription on top of it. And, the realization we came to is, wow, you can buy one of these. We can make these things for a little less than $40, sell them for $40. We don't even make a profit on the device. And then we can sell the subscription for $8.99 a month. So or $100 a year, you can monitor the well-being of, one of your parents or somebody else for $100 a year plus a one-time fee of $40. The closest thing to that is like $500 a year.
Really? But was one of the other reasons, so this is non-invasive.
Right. And, what it doesn't require the participation of the person being monitored either.
Now, does it require the consent?
And with the consent thing, what you find out is about half the time the customer is the adult child, the caretaker, and about half the time the person coming to us is the elderly person wanting the adult child to have access.
Well, that's
so it's very interesting. And to be honest, our biggest competition really isn't any of the companies I mentioned. It's phone calls. Like, if you know enough people, my age, and ask around, you'll find that either their parent calls them or they call their parent every day.
Right.
And it tracks that same interest level. It depends on who wants it to happen, but one of the two wants it to happen.
Right.
People are afraid they're going to slip and fall and no one's going to know. Or, I have a friend in Durango, and he said, yeah, a couple of people last year in the winter, very cold, slipped and fell on their way out to get their newspaper. And, horribly, they died because they couldn't, they lived in a rural area. They couldn't get back in the house. And CarePenguin would have told them, would have said, if they could have checked the app at any time, of course, but they could have been alerted too that the normal behavior wasn't happening in that house. And to me, the really attractive part of the business is we get to bring technology to a group of people that it would be very hard for them, for certain segments to afford anything. It's like, this is expensive. This isn't expensive technology, but the competitive stuff is very expensive technology. And it doesn't have to be that expensive. If you're clever about the way you access this data, you have all the data you need in the signal that we monitor, and nobody thinks it's creepy. Like it's
not like a spy cam in the bedroom.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's nothing. It's nothing like that. And what it comes down to is everybody overthinks this problem. There's two things that work. They either build a product that's very horizontal, like a Nest Cam. They're not really monitoring the wellness of an elderly person. They're sometimes monitoring whether somebody broke in, or they want to know if a package got stolen, or if they want. And as a result of building a horizontal product like that is that it's not really good for anybody. It's kind of good for a lot of people.
Right.
So our goal was let's really attack a vertical problem, which is this, growing old in place, which everybody wants to do. It just becomes increasingly difficult as someone gets older and they don't really have the tools, available to them to do that.
So let me ask you something. So first, for anyone who's interested, the CarePenguin URL is scrolling across the bottom. So, please go check it out, because it sounds like a fantastic, and check out Todd's shirt. But for you as a company, so you have monitoring companies, for you, the technology leaves your factory or your production facility, and really all you're doing is making sure that the app is functioning. Because me as a buyer of it for someone, it's up to me to monitor. It's not an outside monitoring system. It's not central station for my burglar alarm. It's me.
It's you.
So for you as a company, the actual upkeep, the actual, you're charging X a month, but really your cost is, I'm not going to say minimal, but it's making sure your app is functioning.
Yeah, it's a software as service business at the core, which have very high margins. Software service businesses typically are in the 80 to 90%, profit margin at scale. Like I said, we charge for the hardware, but we just charge what it costs us to build the hardware.
It's like the phone, Metro PCS sells the phone. I mean, now it doesn't seem like they're selling it for cost, but they make their money on the monthly nut. Yeah. So now, how many of these do you need to sell to a point where you can then consider that you can really start to scale it?
I think so. Our hurdles are in the range of, to 100 to 500 devices that we want to get into the market as a kind of a final proof point to investors. And while we'll continue the consumer play that we're doing now, selling to consumers, we'll always do that. I think the really interesting thing about the company is selling to assisted living and other facilities where, the mobile aspect can be there, right? You can still, we have customers that do this. They actually put it in assisted living, so they're sure that, everybody's checking up on anybody the way they are. But the idea is, if you had a web dashboard for the assisted living center, those places usually check on somebody once a day, right? Okay. Right? Our product can tell you 7 times a day what's going on, but they check on physically once a day. But if we provided a dashboard that said, you might want to check on these people first because there's been no activity, in their unit today, that could be a real interesting thing, because right now it's just kind of round robin, or if, a particular person that's working there knows, we better check on so-and-so first.
Right.
They're not using real data. They're just using kind of conversational data to figure that out.
Right.
So our goal is to get enough units in the market that it's a proof point to anybody, so that we can, we can finance the company, and then also support these enterprise roles.
So is your end game ultimately to sell it?
Sell the company?
Yeah.
Here's what I always tell people. Honestly, I'm in it to build a really cool business and a really interesting thing. The natural ramifications of that is people show up to buy it. If it's not interesting, no one shows up to buy it. You don't sell your company, people buy your company. And there's a big difference between those two statements. Correct.
And I'm unfortunately we are running out of time, but I can honestly say that I think that it's a ingenious product, especially, around where I live in New York, you have a lot of older people who don't want an aide invading their privacy, who don't want to wear a life alert, who really just want to be left alone and live their lives. And this is a very non-invasive way to really bring peace of mind to their family. And I congratulate you on another fantastic entrepreneurial idea. And hopefully you'll come back at some point, and I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, I would love. Thank you for obviously having me and hearing about the product. I encourage people. It's a money back guarantee. Doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't work for you. We'll give you.
All right. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity, for as long as you weren't with me, to kind of learn how to improvise a little bit, tell really boring stories to people who hopefully they're still there. But it was a pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And you take care and good luck.